All right, Neri, much is being said about this being the most right-wing government in Israel's history. So what is this going to look like for the average Israeli citizen? Is it going to change day-to-day life?
Well, Michelle, I believe so. And we have to differentiate, I suppose, between the average Jewish Israeli citizen and the average Palestinian
That's
Israeli
right.
citizen inside Israel proper. And that's even before we talk about Jerusalem or the West Bank. But yes, in terms of the average Israeli Jewish citizen, the hope and the promise Ben-gvir and the other ultra-nationalists have made is that they will return security to the streets, they will restore national pride, and so on and so forth. Really populist rhetoric, very security-oriented, and so they have their work cut out for them, as we saw just this past week with the twin explosions and terror attacks in Jerusalem. So that's on one side of the ledger. On the other side of the ledger, there is great concern amongst Palestinian citizens of Israel that Itamar Ben-gvir in particular, who has today been given control over the Israel National Police, will really go after and over-police Palestinian Israeli communities and towns and cities, and also under-police in the sense that he will only really go after, say, the outward manifestations of crime and really not want to tackle or be inclined to tackle the deeper structural issues, which is decades of neglect in terms of the Israeli government and the Palestinian citizens of Israel.
Given how tense things have been, though, to say the least, I mean, we've seen violence flare up repeatedly lately. They have to know that there is only so far that they can go in cracking down and responding with force to these flare-ups, because it would only make it worse for them.
You would think so, Michelle, but both their rhetoric and the looming policy agenda of this incoming government suggests otherwise, that they really will go after, say, security issues or Arab-Jewish relations in Israel and in Jerusalem and the West Bank through the prism of force. This is what they've promised. This is really their ideological worldview. And we only have to take a look at part of the coalition agreement that was signed today between Netanyahu and Itamar Ben-gvir. Netanyahu essentially gave up control of the West Bank border police to Itamar Ben-gvir. This is a force that was historically under the control of the Israeli military in the West Bank, and now it is going to be under the direct control of Itamar Ben-gvir as this new national security minister. The border police in the West Bank is responsible for riot control and demonstrations vis-a-vis the Palestinian civilian population in the West Bank. It's also historically been the force that has been sent into settlements when they're deemed illegal and they need to be demolished. That is now, I suppose, no longer on the agenda precisely because that force is under the control of an extremist pro-settler politician like Itamar Ben-gvir.
You know, there's also some unease in the United States and among Israel's Western allies about what exactly this government's going to look out. Explain.
Well, there is a great unease internationally, and I would argue rightfully so. The emerging contours of this new Israeli government, both in terms of the key personnel like Itamar Ben-gvir, but not just only Itamar Ben-gvir, real extremists with a real ideological worldview, and also just in terms of the policy agenda that Netanyahu has promised these new coalition partners of his. Expanded settlement construction in the West Bank, looser rules of engagement vis-a-vis Palestinians, both in the West Bank and inside Israel proper, and the list is quite long. So the unease internationally, I think, is correct. The real question to my mind is whether there will be any real consequences for this new Israeli government in terms of the international community once they take power and once they begin implementing this fairly radical agenda.
All right, Neri Zilber, always good to hear from you. Thanks.